Welcome back. All right, my continuing look at the WrestleManias. We're up to WrestleMania 3. And I wanted to say in response to a comment I saw yesterday, I'm not rewatching these. I watched these ages ago. I still remember what happened because WrestleMania was a big deal. The early WrestleManias, it's not like there was a pay per view every 3 weeks like there is now. And I feel like wrestling and now that TKO is running WWE, clearly they want just all the money, 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 which I get. Fine, you're a company, that's your job. But it does take away some of that feeling of something fresh, something different that we had with WrestleManias early. And the build was different, just very, very different back then to what it is now. We didn't have like, okay, you guys are going to face each other at Mania, so you guys are going to tag up with these guys who are going to face those guys. And it's just, we didn't have that. We would have Saturday night's main event as basically a setup. The last Saturday night's main event before Mania was fantastic every year. And then we'd get into, but of course that was on network TV, and then we'd get into the pay per view, which was WrestleMania 3. WrestleMania 3, huge. At the Pontiac Silverdome, large crowd. Didn't Vince McMahon like inflate the numbers on that? But anyways, Vince McMahon was really big on pomp and circumstance, and this event was no different. Although the way I remember it, that the celebrities were scaled back a lot, but then again, you only have one location, so you don't want just a bunch of celebrities coming out. And maybe they realized from the year before that they overdid it. WrestleMania 3 was actually a pretty good event, and it starts well. And there's always been the debate too about being that first match on. The term used around the wrestling world was curtain jerker. I don't hear that anymore, which is you're opening the curtain, right? I don't hear that now. The match that goes on first very often is highly anticipated now when they have pay per views. Back then, not necessarily as much. Although I loved the Can Am connection of Rick Martel and Tom Zenk. I thought that tag team was fantastic. And they opened the show by beating Bob Orton and Magnificent Morocco, who, as I remember, was just two random guys thrown together. That's how I remember it. Looking at this, I'm like, how do you end up with Orton and Morocco together? It's weird pairing, that one. But I mean, Piper was busy with other things and he had turned face, and Orton wouldn't have worked as a face. So unlike his son Randy, Bob Orton never would have worked as a face. And Magnificent Morocco was not a face as of yet. He would get a little bit buffer, shall we say. We can get into the debate on that at a later time, maybe in a different video. But yeah, Morocco wasn't quite The Rock yet. Yeah, Don the Rock Morocco became his name. At this point, he's still Magnificent Morocco, but the idea that Rocky was the first one that was known as the Rock, I don't even know if he was the second. I would imagine Don the Rock Morocco was probably not the first either. Anyways, that was a pretty good match. It went 5 minutes and 37 seconds. So there you go. Then at 7 minutes and 44 seconds, Billy Jack Haynes versus Hercules. No longer Hernandez, just Hercules. And that goes to a double countout. I like Billy Jack Haynes. I was a big fan of his when he first came in. I thought he had something different. I have not watched The Dark Side of the Ring on Billy Jack Haynes yet. I have heard plenty of things about him. If the internet had existed back then, who knows? Maybe the wrestlers that were popular would have been less popular, but I thought he was a pretty good wrestler. So that went 7:44, which is one of the longer matches of the night because, again, the matches were more about everything else going on rather than necessarily just the match itself. Then 3 minutes and 25 seconds. I hated the build to this. I did. I never really, yeah, none of this really worked for me. Hillbilly Jim, he's back, tagging with the Haiti Kid and Little Beaver, defeated King Kong Bundy, Little Tokyo, and Lord Littlebrook by DQ. Mercifully, this match was 3 minutes and 25 seconds. Mercifully. Because Hillbilly Jim, I never thought for a second that he could actually beat King Kong Bundy. And once you get into the hornswoggle-sized wrestlers, not the terminology we used at the time, of course. Terminology is no longer used, but at any rate, I would be interested to rewatch that and see what kind of terminology gets thrown around by the announcers. But I never saw the point, and I remember feeling kind of sad for King Kong Bundy that he goes from being in the main event of WrestleMania 2 to being in this WrestleMania 3. So that's how quickly you can get depushed in WWF. And I don't really have anything to add other than every time these segments would come on where they were building to it, I just kind of wanted them to come to an end as quickly as possible, which the match did. It was the shortest match of the night. Not by a lot, though. Then at 4 minutes and 22 seconds, Harley Race defeated the Junkyard Dog. I believe he was King Harley Race at this point, because I do remember Junkyard Dog leaving the ring wearing the crown and having I believe he had the scepter as well, and he had the robe. Harley Race got the crown and the king. I do believe this was as an answer to King Jerry Lawler. So Harley Race didn't need any kind of weird gimmick either. Harley Race was an amazingly good wrestler, but everybody who went from NWA over to WWF got a stupid gimmick. It's just the way it worked. And of course, we'll get to Mr. Polka Dots at some point soon, but not at WrestleMania 3. Dusty Rhodes was not wearing the polka dots yet in WrestleMania 3. But Harley Race defeating Junkyard Dog's the way it should have been, and then you give Junkyard Dog kind of a bit of a rub at the end of it, because sure. Then at 4 minutes and 3 seconds, the Dream Team, Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus Beefcake, still together. They defeated the Rougeau brothers. Jacques and Raymond Rougeau, as faces, they were very, very vanilla. And I could never really get on board, even though they're Canadian. I should have been rooting for the Canadians. Let's go. But eventually, Jacques Rougeau becomes the Mountie. And that was something that happened. Not yet, though. A lot of weird stuff going on with wrestling as time went on. The obsession with giving people weird gimmicks was definitely a thing. Then at 6 minutes and 33 seconds, Roddy Piper defeated Adrian Adonis. Adonis made the best he could out of what was a very cringy persona they gave him, which couldn't be more of an antithesis to the character he had when he came in. I will say this, though, with Adrian Adonis, that the biker look that he had initially when he came in, like all the black leather and everything, just, I don't know, it didn't really stand out. And at the very least, when he had the flower shop, stood out. He stood out, and the feud between Roddy Piper and Adrian Adonis was one to remember. When Roddy Piper thrashed the flower shop, and I was always sad too, because Piper's Pit was my favorite of the segments, and then Vince being Vince, he just did more and more of these segments, and I never really felt like anything lived up to Piper's Pit. I never did, and I still feel that way. We still have these segments, and now they're just segments inside the ring, which is not how Piper's Pit started out. But yeah, so Piper defeats Adrian Adonis, takes 6 minutes and 33 seconds. Probably some cringy moments in there too. I'm not bringing up all the cringy moments either. I'm just saying. Yeah, but it was Hot Rod. Roddy Piper at this point had become my favorite wrestler. He, along with Ricky Steamboat, my two favorite wrestlers. Then at 8 minutes and 52 seconds, Danny Davis and the Hart Foundation defeated Tito Santana and the British Bulldogs. The whole Danny Davis being a crooked referee thing never worked for me. I was never a fan. And then Danny Davis became a wrestler, and I felt like because he started out as a referee, it was hard to take him really, really seriously as a ref, or as a wrestler when he'd already been a ref. And then the weird thing was, he went on this whole run as a heel, and eventually he just showed up back in the ring as a referee. And I remember watching TV and going, that's Danny Davis just calling the match. Isn't he a bad guy? Wasn't he a wrestler? But it didn't last that long. But he gets a win at WrestleMania, so he's undefeated at WrestleMania. So think on that one for a second. Because I'm 99.9% sure Danny Davis was never in another WrestleMania match. But the Hart Foundation, of course, you got Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, one of the best tag teams in the history of wrestling. Then at 3 minutes and 39 seconds, Butch Reed defeated Coco Beware. Coco Beware, the Hall of Famer. Coco never won a match at WrestleMania. In fact, Coco Beware, I talked yesterday about how you had jobbers and you had like kind of the mid-card guys. Coco Beware was kind of in that Iron Mike Sharp territory where he did have the parrot and he did have kind of a fun entrance. But once the bell rang, it was clear that WWF never planned on really pushing him. So Coco Beware, I don't remember him ever winning a feud. I don't remember him ever winning a really big match. So when they put him in the Hall of Fame, I was surprised for that reason because there were some big stars that weren't in. I was like, Coco's going in? And I felt like maybe it was a way of them saying, look, you were such a good soldier for us for years, so you're going in the Hall of Fame. Because, yeah, he never won anything. Butch Reed beating him in 3 minutes and 39 seconds. Not that they really knew what to do with Butch Reed anyways. Then at 14 minutes and 35 seconds, the longest match on the card. And to this day, one of the best matches in wrestling history. And if you get a chance to watch it and you haven't watched it, go watch it. Ricky Steamboat defeated Randy Savage for the Intercontinental title. George the Animal Steel was a ringside and did get involved a little bit there. But Ricky Steamboat winning the title was one of my favorite moments in WrestleMania history. The match was fantastic, and I remember Ricky Steamboat saying that Randy Savage had written out every single move. This is exactly how this match is going to go. And so basically it went for every beat that Randy Savage had put into the match. And it was great. It was absolutely fantastic. Notice the time, 14 and a half minutes. So when I see people saying, well, it's got to be 20 minutes or more and you got to really give them time, you don't. I think a great wrestling match should be about 12 to 15 minutes. I don't think you need to be out there. And when you get into these marathon matches they have now, how much of that time is spent at ringside just smashing each other's faces into the barrier? How much of that time is spent maybe fighting through the crowd and fighting their way back? Just get it in the ring, leave most of it in the ring. The build for this was big too because Randy Savage had hit Ricky Steamboat in the throat with the ring bell, and they made this big deal. I think they said that he had a crushed trachea, something like that. Like it was, and at the time there were a lot of fans that may not have known that this was fake. Now I knew that things were predetermined, sure, but it still looked brutal to me. There was still that part, and there are still moments where I'm watching wrestling where I go, okay, predetermined, but that still looks like that hurt. And wrestlers will tell you if it looks like it hurt on TV, it probably did. So yeah, Steamboat winning the title was fantastic. One of my favorite moments in wrestling history. 7 minutes and 4 seconds, Honky Tonk Man defeated Jake the Snake Roberts. I never understood the fascination with Honky Tonk Man, other than the crowd hated him. I think it was just the amount of heat that he could generate. I think Vince loved it. So Honky Tonk Man went over there over Jake the Snake, who never won a title in WWF, which there's two ways to look at this. You can look at it and say, Jake the Snake Roberts was overlooked by WWF and they should have given him a belt. Or you can say Jake the Snake Roberts was over so much with the fans and the fans loved and hated him so much he didn't need a belt. So you can look at it both ways there. Then 5 minutes and 44 seconds for Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov to defeat the Killer Bees, Jumping Jim Brunzell, and B. Brian Blair, Iron Sheik's favorite person. So Iron Sheik made him humble. Either way, Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov win the match because, of course, they did. I think this was the last Mania that had them tagging together. Sheik eventually, I think it was his knees that went out on him, but yeah, it was basically you've got heels winning back-to-back matches here, which it does feel like there were a lot of heels that won. Let me just count this out. Can-Am Connect, faces, faces, faces. Well, it's all faces at the start. Heel, heel, face, heel, heel, face, heel, heel. Which brings us up to the main event. Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. And I was rooting for Andre so much. I did not care that he broke the necklace of Hulk Hogan. I did not care that he joined Bobby Heenan. I did not care that he had turned his back on the fans. I didn't care. I wanted Andre the Giant to beat Hulk Hogan and be the new champion. I knew it was very unlikely to happen. The match is shown here as 12 minutes and 1 second, and yet I remember it as being about 9 minutes. So these, I think, are the official times. I get them off Wikipedia. Easy enough. But I think that match was about 9.5 minutes, as I remember it. And it was tough because Andre was having a lot of problems with his movement, his back at that stage too. So there was also the concern about whether or not Andre would be willing to do the job. If Andre the Giant at over 500 pounds decides, I'm not getting slammed, he's not getting slammed. Hulk Hogan's body slam of Andre the Giant was sold as if it was the first time in history Andre the Giant had been body slammed. If you are a listener of Jim Cornette's podcast, I will back him on this. Andre the Giant had been body slammed before. And and Andre the Giant had been a heel before as well, but not for the WWF audience, and it worked. Andre the Giant as a heel was so fun because honestly, who's going to stop him? Well, in this case, it was Hulk Hogan because, of course, but I was already to the point where I wanted Hogan to lose the belt. This is now 3 years of Hulk Hogan with the belt, and not just with the belt, but showing up occasionally and never ending up on the short side of a feud. So, as fans back then, we didn't really have to know any of the backstage stuff. We didn't have to know who politicked. You could tell when you watched the matches. Hulk Hogan always looked like a superhero, and in this case, it was at the expense of Andre the Giant. But good on Andre for being willing to get the body slam against him and for laying down for the 3 count, because he could have just said, "I'm not doing that," and Hogan would have had nothing. There's no chance. Andre the Giant's hand was bigger than my head, so yeah, there's no chance that if he had said, I think I'm gonna take that title, there's nothing Hogan could have done. Nothing. There just isn't. So it was a really fun event, and it set the table for WrestleMania 4, which by the time we get to WrestleMania 4, we've seen a face turn by Randy Savage. And I mean, I could try to tell people who weren't around back then, and I know a lot of my audience is too young to remember, Randy Savage was way more popular than Hulk Hogan for a good while there. And like, we all loved Savage. We did not all love Hogan. And eventually the super mega powers explode, of course, but this is way before that. This is where Savage is still a bad guy, so to speak, but he did the job too, and lost the Intercontinental title to Ricky Steamboat. And I cheered so loud when Steamboat won that match. I was so happy when Steamboat won that match. So WrestleMania 3 was a good memory. As much as WrestleMania 2 was a mess, WrestleMania 3 was great. I do believe 12 matches. Yep, 12 match card. This is why now when it's a pay-per-view and it's 5 matches, I'm like, 5 matches and it's 3 hours? Are you bloody kidding me? What the hell? So it's very padded. It makes it very, very difficult for me to follow, because this to me is how wrestling worked. I don't remember a lot of, oh, well, Junkyard Dog loses in 4.5 minutes. Well, he's buried. Yeah. No. Did he lose? Yep. Did he do it in front of, 70,000 people? Yep. Was he still in WWF after that? Yeah. And still cheered, and fans still liked him. So, yeah, there you go. We're seeing match times that are still quite low. We will see them going up as the years go by. But WrestleMania 3 was a very enjoyable event. If I had to rank the first three WrestleManias, WrestleMania 3 is the best. WrestleMania 1 would now be second. There was a time where WrestleMania 1 was my least favorite, and then WrestleMania 2 would be third. Just some of those matches are just not good. But there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support, as always, and we'll talk to you again soon.